Dear cynics and romantics, my name is Monice and you are listening to the Romantic Cynic podcast. On this episode, I wanted to ask the question, when is it time to let go of a romantic relationship? When you feel as if this isn't the one for you? How do you know? What signs should you be looking for? So I hope you join me on today's episode where we might mix in some laughter, maybe some tears, romance, and of course, some cynicism. Welcome to episode 27. At what point does a person need to decide to leave a romantic relationship? There can be many factors to consider, such as family, kids, money, mental state, or maybe the simple fact that you still 100% love this person. But you're starting to question things. You're starting to realize little patterns, or maybe there's been things that you've been experiencing for quite a few years where you're just not happy anymore. Your needs are not being satisfied. And the relationship is causing you more emotional stress than happiness. So at what point does a person have to decide when to leave? Now, I can only talk about my own experiences of when I left my marriage. I got to a point where a lot of my needs were not being fulfilled. I was asking for some changes to be made of just the way he treated me as a person. You know, one of the big things about my now ex-husband was he was big on creating a team environment between him and myself. You know, it was this very much this personality of, me against the world or us against the world. And that was what he thought was driving our relationship. Unfortunately, with him, he treated me very much like I was a child. Like, he talked down to me. He made me feel as if I was the child and he was the parent. And he just I think he took joy in just telling me what to do and expected me to listen and to basically do whatever he told me to do. And me kind of having a stubborn streak. I think most people in general don't like being told what to do, but there's a way of asking your partner to do certain things in a very polite, respectful manner. And with my ex-husband, it was more of like, you just have to do what I tell you to do. And lots of double standards in that relationship. I know I've mentioned that before in previous episodes, but that was a lot of double standards was a big part of our relationship. Now, I can say that there were moments, we had some happy times. We had some good, decent moments in our relationship. Not every single day was bad. I felt like we had far more bad days than we did have good days. And I got to a point where my mental state, my emotional state wasn't in a healthy place for me. I was miserable. I was lonely. I was depressed. There was no happiness. And what I found exceedingly interesting was the moments I felt like I had a glimpse of happiness, or maybe I was questioning like, hey, this how I'm feeling right now feels okay. It feels good. Were the moments when he was nowhere near me. He was not even in my vicinity. I felt like I was the happiest with him when I was away from him. And what I mean by that is I would think about our past moments of those moments of happiness that we had shared, those moments of joy we had shared. And so I was living a lot of those moments in the past. There was no future to be had. There was no happiness. I didn't feel like as if there was any happiness going into the future. I was living a lot of those wonderful, kind of sweet moments in the past. And that's what I was kind of holding on to for a long time. And I had been with him for many years. And I just eventually got to a point where I had to be selfish and choose my my overall happiness, regardless if it was with him or not with him. And we all have to create our own happiness. We're all individually responsible for our own happiness. We can't rely on another person to make us happy. Now, we can have a person that is in our lives that we're happy with. We're the most we're the best versions of ourselves, and the person that we're with just brings out something extraordinarily wonderful in us, and in those moments, yes, you are happy, and because the person provides the happiness within yourself, but you're not altogether relying on them. That is actually pretty important. We can't seek out outside forces that we believe are responsible to provide us happiness, because at the very end of the day, when you go to sleep at night, you yourself are responsible for your own happiness. And I got to a point where no matter what I did in this relationship, I just wasn't happy. And so I had to let go. And it's never easy letting go of a relationship, especially with as much history and as much time that I had invested into this relationship. But, some of the things I'm talking about now are key points to remember, to think about when you're questioning, hey, should I end this relationship? Should I let go? Now, there's are a few things that we have to really consider, or at least ask ourselves, is this the right relationship for me? The one big one I had mentioned is, my needs were not being met. Ask yourself, are your needs being currently met in the relationship? And if they're not, then it's really good to have those conversations with your partner, telling them and explaining to them, hey, my needs are not being fulfilled, and this is how you can help fulfill some of my needs. And they can be as simple as, letting me know where you are, if, throughout the day, as an example, not saying that, hey, we need a list of things that I need you to tell me because I need to know where you are 24/7, but little things like, hey, if you can just let me know if you're going someplace, that's part of a need. Another need is, maybe in a physical sense, like, hey, if you can, give me compliments when maybe I dress a certain way, things like that, small things like that, can help, fulfill a need for a person. When someone isn't fulfilling a need for you, sometimes what ends up happening, especially if you've communicated that with your partner multiple times, causes some resentment in the relationship. And what ultimately ends up happening is we end up seeking those needs from others. We seek outside fulfillment from other people. And once that happens, because, you've had the conversation with your partner, but your partner continues to not fulfill those needs for you, we as people, we're going to end up seeking out other people outside of a relationship to fulfill those needs. And it could be friends, it could be family, it could be coworkers. You hear a lot about how I think there's that work wife, work husband. If you are, if you have experienced something exciting, or there's an emotion and you want to share it with someone, and you don't seek out your partner to share that with, you seek out someone else, that is definitely an indicator that maybe that the relationship should no longer progress. It should no longer go forward, and maybe it should end at that point. I know sometimes, we as people might not be comfortable communicating what we need. So maybe we're scared to ask our partners. If you feel as if you're scared to ask your partner, maybe because, you have a fear of them leaving you, or you have a fear of maybe they will talk down to you or get mad at you. If you don't have that type of trust and you are just scared to reach out to your partner is another indication that the relationship is no longer healthy. It's you have to seek outside comfort sometimes from other people because you are fearful, and it might not be because of, maybe there's abuse. Maybe it's not necessarily abuse. Maybe it's just the fact that there's things that they've done. Maybe there's some judgment, or maybe they just got angry with you, or maybe they blamed you for all the issues or all the problems, and so you're scared to ask for help, or you're scared to communicate whatever you need to communicate with your partner. Another big thing, another red flag that, you have to consider, and I know that I experienced this after the end of my my longest term relationship, were the fact that I had friends and family that weren't completely supportive of the relationship, and only because I tended to hide things from my family and hide things from my friends, not because it was more because I was ashamed of the relationship I was in, and I wanted people to see a certain aspect of my relationship. I wanted people to see as if it was healthy because I was trying to protect, myself. A big part of me is I love my family more than anything, and I didn't want my family and my friends to worry. I know there was animosity. There's probably some animosity between, my now ex-husband and, my family, but only because he just never got to know them. And, the things that I shared with my ex-husband, he used those things against me, and he would use those things against my family. And it's just like, I'm just trying to be open with you, but there was some animosity from his end. And after my relationship had ended, I did have friends like they would tell me like, I don't understand, why you ended up marrying him. And, I joke about like, hey, you didn't pre-warn me, but, beforehand. But at the end of the day, just like all people and human nature, we would probably tend to not listen to those people, or just like dig our heels just a little bit more, just saying, hey, this is the best relationship I've ever been in, even if you feel as if they're right. Sometimes pride gets in the way a little bit of really seeking out and seeing things at face value. I think another one is sometimes you feel obligated to stay with your partner. I know for me, for example, my ex-husband's mother had passed away, and so I felt as if I needed to stay with him because he very much depended on me. And that's how I felt. I felt like he depended on me. I felt bad for him. I didn't want to, he was already going through so much emotionally at the time, and I felt guilty for wanting to leave. So I ended up staying for a few more years. And that obligation should never be a factor to the health of the overall relationship. It should never make you feel as if you have to stay. And in some situations, you might feel that way for whatever reason. Again, a big part of the obligation itself is how much time you've invested into the relationship. Some people think, well, the longer I'm in this relationship, no matter how unhealthy it is, I'm going to reap the benefits at some point. And that's just not the case, because you are ultimately sacrificing yourself and you and who you are as a person. I think a big part of probably staying with someone that you probably shouldn't, or the relationship is not in a place that you want it to be, is we tend to, and I know I can only speak for myself, we tend to lie to ourselves because we want it to be so much more than it actually is. And even though, and again, I can only speak for myself, even though I saw exactly how unhealthy it was. Even though I saw and felt like it wasn't the right relationship for me, I continued to stay because I had some delusion of hope. I thought that it would get better over time, and the problem with that is relationships that are kind of doomed to fail, they get progressively worse as the years progress. They don't get progressively better unless you and your partner each have this enlightening moment where it does happen. You have an enlightening moment and then you are stronger than ever because of it, and that does happen. But more often than not, it just again it causes this resentment in the relationship. And I know for me, another factor was I didn't like who he was as a person. I didn't like him. There were moments that I loved him, and then of course once the relationship was coming to an end, I just didn't love him anymore. I didn't like who he was. I didn't like who I was, and I didn't love who I was. And those are other just factors that we have to really consider when we're trying to figure out, should we end a relationship? If you no longer like who you are, if you feel like you've sacrificed so much of the person that you maybe once were, or you feel that there's so much more potential within yourself, but you are with someone that just doesn't support you and doesn't fulfill the needs that you yourself require in a relationship to feel safe and to feel loved and to feel as if you're a priority and number one. All those factors are so important and critical in a healthy relationship. And if none of those needs are being met, no matter how long you've been with your partner, no matter how your current situation, no matter if there are other external factors involved, you really have to stop and really look at your overall happiness. I know some people would probably say, well, this is really selfish. I think a part of it is society kind of looks down upon someone who's single. They look down like, oh, well, your marriage ended or your relationship ended, so therefore you're a failure. I think it takes far more strength to leave an unhealthy relationship than staying in a relationship. It's not about quitting. It's not about that judgment of, there is some judgment there could be some judgment from other people about well, your relationship ended, so you're a failure. And that is that person's own perspective. And you should not listen to someone like that. You should not allow someone to make you feel guilty because you are doing what is best for you. And, one thing to really think about is the value of time. We are so limited on time. We can't waste time on someone that we're unhappy with. We can't waste time living in the past, hoping for a future. We can't waste time wanting to achieve things, in life, and being with a partner that just won't allow you to achieve those in life. Achieve those things in life, because what ends up happening is you end up going through year after year. You get resentment, you become bitter, and then all of a sudden your life passes you by, and you're going to say to yourself, man, I wish I left when I wanted to, or when I should have left. And you never want to get to a point in your life where you have so much regret. I think so many people have regret nowadays, and you can't live that type of life. You can't live in constant regret. You need to find happiness. And when you think that you're wasting all this time in a relationship, and maybe you are, but if you are the type of person that's like, well, I've invested so much time in this person, but they're not giving you what you need, just think the fact that you are ultimately wasting time maybe finding the person that is going to fulfill your needs, that's going to help bring happiness into your life, that's going to help satisfy you, who's going to encourage you to be the best version of yourself. That's going to love you for exactly who you are as a person. And that is just my take on, when it's time to leave a relationship. So I did find a quote. I like finding quotes now just to see, that kind of puts in perspective, or a little bit of a thought, or maybe makes you think a little bit on these topics I now talk about. And so this one, I couldn't, of course, though the quotes I can't find an author. It's always usually unknown, but this is the quote I found in regards to letting go in a relationship. Because in every relationship, there comes a point when the damage is too much, and no matter how good it once was, the memories can't sustain you. You have to save yourself, knowing all the while it will hurt like hell, because you can't keep giving someone everything if you get nothing in return. Thank you for listening, and as always, yours truly, the Romantic Cynic.